Hello chess friends. Today I'd like to draw your attention on basic king and pawn endgames. And although the amount of material is less on the board, especially in this kind of endgames, there are still a lot of resources and tricks in this endgames. It's actually a vast topic and I'd be making a series of videos in which I will cover topics like triangulation, under promotion, fortresses, stalemates, pawn breakthroughs and many such important topics. But in this video, we would be focusing on pawn sacrifices as a defensive and winning resource. So that's a very interesting topic for king and pawn. Okay, so let's begin. It's white to play and win. So I'll be showing a lot of videos. So whenever you feel like you can just pause the video and find the answer. Okay, I'll just go ahead and show you the solution of this. If white has to move, white must sacrifice a pawn in this position. So first he needs to protect the pawn. So here he goes, king e6, protecting the pawn and threatening to play king e7. So that has to be blocked. So king d8, and now white, there's only one way to save to win the game. If king d6, then that's just a draw. So white plays king to d5, sacrificing the pawn. Black takes the pawn, and here is the idea. White plays b6, and now he's completely winning. So let's take a look at king to d8 first. Now we have king d6, king c8, king c6, and we will promote. That's easily winning. Okay, what happens if he plays king to c8? We just give king c6 opposition, and again white simply promotes. Okay, so that was the first example, and the key idea in this example was to sacrifice the pawn with king to d5. So remember this idea and let's go on to the next puzzle. So here we go, this is a second puzzle. It's white to play and win. So you can always pause the video and try to find it yourself. I'll just go ahead and tell you the solution. So there are two ways of winning. White can play king h5 or king f5, but king f5 wins in less number of moves, so we'll go king f5. Now black has to play king g7, and this again we see the same idea of sacrificing the pawn to win the game. White just plays h8 queen, giving up the pawn, and after king takes we play king f6, and this is easily winning. I'll just go to the finish. After king to h5, white can mate into with queen to g3. It's a very basic technique, and queen g6 is checkmate. Okay, so that was again a very interesting puzzle which demonstrates the idea of sacrificing a pawn in order to win a game. Now let's take a look at a third example. So here is a third puzzle. You might take a pause and try to find it yourself. Again, the same theme, sacrificing a pawn. Okay, so you can see white has two isolated pawns and one is a dangerous outside passed pawn. So what happens if we just start pushing the pawn? Actually, if you look at it, black king is in the box, in the square of the pawn, and can easily stop him. So a4 is not winning for white. Let's take a look at this. Black is just in time and stops the pawn. So in order to win this position, black must cut off the shortest distance to the pawn, to the queening square, and that is the diagonal. So here he plays d5. Now this is a dangerous passed one and has to be captured. So after pawn takes pawn, we go a4, and you can see the d5 square is occupied by pawn and the king cannot use it, which means the king has to take a much longer route to stop the pawn, and he is just not in time, and white queens and he will win the game. Okay, so this was another example of a position where white sacrifices in order to win the game. So this d5 move was the one you had to see. So let's take a look at a fourth position. So this is a fourth position, and here white is actually on the defensive side. He is having quite a bad position, and it seems that by simple means black wins. So if for example, if white plays something like king d2, this doesn't work and black simply wins with c4, king d1, c3, and white cannot go back to the d2 square, so he has to move away from the defense of the pawn, and this pawn is taken and black will win the game. So here white needs to sacrifice a pawn in order to save the game. So here he plays c4. Now black chases the pawn, king c1, king takes c4, king c2, and that is a opposition. We are just in time, and this position is actually a draw. So let me demonstrate the win here, the draw here for white. King b4, king b2. This is a typical technique, and we have nearly mastered it, and we can do it with the eyes closed. So there we go. So all you have to remember here is to play this defensive pawn sacrifice, and actually it's a very resourceful one. So this time white used a pawn sacrifice to in a defensive way. So let's take a look at our fifth position. So this is the position, and white is again on the defensive. It seems on the outside that he's going to lose a pawn, and probably the game as well, because the black pawn is back on c7 and the key squares are b5, c5, d5. So it seems that white is going to lose the game. But here again we have a resource. We can sacrifice a pawn to win the game, to draw the game, pardon me. So here we go. We play d6, and this cannot be ignored. This has to be captured. And now we go king b3 opposition, king c5, king c3. And again, as I said, this is a rather routine technique for experts or just intermediate players. So actually I can go for the till the end. I'll show you to the end. It's routine and simple. It's just a draw. Okay, so again the key idea here was to sacrifice the pawn in a defensive way. So we have seen sacrificing the pawn in order to win the game, and this time we are looking at sacrificing the pawn in a defensive manner. So let's take a look at our last example. So here we go, viewers. This is our last position. Again, white is on the losing side, almost losing. It looks like losing, but it's not. So it's white to play and draw. And as usual, you can pause the video, think for yourself. This is a much complicated position, and if you're not well aware of the concepts of key squares and opposition, I might make a video on that in the future. Okay, so let's take a look at what white has to play. First of all, white plays king to c2. So he's trying to bring his king as advanced as possible. Remember, the key squares of this pawn are g5, h5, and f5. So if the king reaches any of these squares, it's completely winning for black. So now he goes king e6, king d6, and now this is the moment we need to sacrifice a pawn. And why do we sacrifice a pawn in this position? The reason for this is now the pawn has transferred from g7 to f6, and the key squares have changed. The key squares of f6 pawn are e4, f4, and g4, which means that if the king is unable to reach on any of these squares, it will be a draw. And actually white simply does that. Plays king to d2, king d6, king e2, and once the king advances, now we give opposition, and this is again a drawn position. So okay, you can take a look at it and you might want to study it yourself. Again, white's drawing technique is rather easy here. So hope you enjoyed all these puzzles and you got something from the video. So again, as you saw, white or black both can use this pawn sacrifices in defensive as well as attacking manner. So maybe in the next video I'll go and take a look at triangulation or something more interesting like under promotion. So until next time, thank you for watching the video, and do subscribe if you want more videos just like this one.